Who would invent such a sport, man? I hate basketball.
Actually, Gabriel, it was James Naismith who created the game of basketball in 1981. The history of basketball. James Naismith. James Naismith created the game of basketball in 1981 while working as a physical education teacher at the YMCA International Training School, today known as Springfield College, in the United States. Naismith was given the task to find in 14 days an indoor game to provide athletic distraction for the students at the School for Christian Workers. Naismith recalled the concept of a game that he used to play when he was younger known as duck on a rock that involved accuracy, attempting to knock a duck off the top of a large rock by tossing another rock at it. Basketball created from that day on, as Dr. Naismith developed 13 rules that the game must follow. The first game was played with a soccer ball and 2 peach baskets nailed 10 feet high, which were used as goals, on a court just half the size of a present-day court. The baskets retained their bottoms, so balls scored into the basket had to be poked out with a long dowel each time, and dribbling, bouncing the ball up and down while moving, was not part of the original game. Thanks to Dr. Naismith, basketball grew extremely popular to the YMCA movement, and it gained the attention from many different nations.
Hey, what the hell? Hey, what is that? It's a ball! I don't understand the rules! Actually, Naismith originally created the rules.
The first 13 rules. The ball may be thrown in any direction with one or both hands. Number 2. The ball may be batted in any direction with one or both hands, but never with the fist. 3. A player cannot run with the ball. The player must throw it from the spot on which he catches it, allowance to be made for a man running at good speed. Number 4. The ball must be held in or between the hands. The arms or body must not be used for holding it. 5. No shouldering, holding, pushing, striking, or tripping in any way of an opponent. The first infringement of this rule by any person shall count as a foul. The second shall disqualify him until the next goal is made, or if there was evident intent to injure the person for the whole of the game. No substitution shall be allowed. Number 6. A foul is striking at the ball with the fist, violations of rules 3 and 4, and such as described in Rule 5. Number 7. If either side make 3 consecutive fouls, it shall count as a goal for the opponents. Consecutive means without the opponents in the meantime making a foul. Number 8. Goal shall be made when the ball is thrown or batted from the ground into the basket and stays there, providing those defending the goal do not touch or disturb the goal. If the ball rests on the edge and the opponents move the basket, it shall count as a goal. Number 9. When the ball goes out of bounds, it shall be thrown into the field and played by the first person touching it. In case of any dispute, the umpire shall throw it straight into the field. The thrower in is allowed 5 seconds. If he holds it longer, it shall go to the opponent. If any side persists in delaying the game, the umpire shall call a foul on them. Number 10. The umpire shall be judge of the men and shall note the fouls and notify the referee when 3 consecutive fouls have been made. He shall have the power to disqualify men according to rule number 5. Number 11. The referee shall be the judge of the ball and decide when it is in play in bounds, to which side it belongs, and shall keep the time. He shall decide when a goal has been made and keep account of the goals with any other duties that are usually performed by the referee. Number 12. The time shall be 2 15-minute halves with 5 minutes rest between. Number 13. The side making the most goals in that time shall be declared the winners.
Naismith's original rules did not specify how many players were to be on the court. In 1900, 5 players became standard, and players that were substituted were not allowed to re-enter the game. Players were allowed to re-enter a game once from 1921 and twice from 1934. Such restrictions and substitutions were abolished in 1945 when substitutions became unlimited. Coaching was originally prohibited during the game, but from 1949, coaches were allowed to address players during a timeout. Originally, a player was disqualified on his second foul. This limit became 4 fouls in 1911 and 5 fouls in 1945. Still the case in most forms of basketball, where the normal length of a game, before any overtime period, is 40 minutes. When the normal length is 48 minutes, this is the case for the NBA in the States, a player is accordingly disqualified on his 6th foul. Dribbling was not part of the original game, but was introduced in 1901. At the time, a player could only bounce the ball once and could not shoot after he had dribbled. The definition of dribbling became the continuous passage of the ball in 1909, allowing more than one bounce, and the player who had dribbled was then allowed to shoot. Running with the ball ceased to be considered a foul in 1922 and became a violation, meaning that the only penalty was loss of possession. Striking the ball with the fist has also become a violation. From 1931, if a closely guarded player withheld the ball from play for 5 seconds, play was stopped and resumed with a jump ball. Such a situation has since become a violation by the ball carrier. Goaltending became a violation in 1944 and offensive goaltending in 1958. Free throws were introduced shortly after basketball was invented. In 1895, the free throw line was officially placed 15 feet, 4.6 meters from the backboard, prior to which gymnasiums placed 20 feet, 6.1 meters from the backboard. From 1924, players that received a foul were required to shoot their own free throws. 1 free throw shot is awarded to a player who was fouled while making a successful field goal attempt. If the field goal attempt is unsuccessful, 2 free throw shots are awarded, 3 if the player was attempting a 3-point field goal. If an offensive player is fouled when not in the act of shooting, or if a player is fouled in a loose ball situation, the penalty varies by level of play and the number of fouls accumulated by the opposing team in a given period. The ball was to be an ordinary association football, in other words, a soccer ball. The goal was placed 10 feet, 3.05 meters above the court. Originally, a basket was used, thus basketball, so the ball had to be retrieved after each made shot. Today, a hoop with an open bottom hanging net is used instead. The first time restriction on possession of the ball was introduced in 1933, where teams were required to advance the ball over the center line within 10 seconds of gaining possession. This rule remained until 2000, when FIBA reduced the requirement to 8 seconds. The NBA followed suit in 2001. The NCAA retains the 10-second rule for men's play, but has yet to adopt this rule for women's play. In May 2013, the NCAA Women's Basketball Rules Committee recommended adding the 10-second rule starting in the 2013-14 season. The change is expected to be approved by the NCAA Oversight Committee in June. U.S. high schools whose rules are drafted by the NFHS also use the 10-second rule for both sexes. In 1936, the 3-second rule was introduced. This rule prohibits offensive players from remaining near the opponent's basket for longer than 3 seconds. A game central to this rule's introduction was that between the University of Kentucky and New York University. Kentucky coach Adolph Rupp did not take one of his referees with him, despite being warned of discrepancies in officiating between the Midwest and East by Notre Dame coach George Kogan, and the game became especially rough. Because of this game and others, 6'5" Kentucky All-American center LaWarrie Edwards is generally recognized as the player responsible for the 3-second rule. While the rule was originally adopted to reduce roughness in the area between big men, it is now considered to prevent tall offensive players from gaining an advantage by waiting close to the basket. The shot clock was first introduced by the NBA in 1954 to increase the speed of play. Teams were then required to attempt a shot within 24 seconds of gaining possession, and the shot clock would be reset when the ball touched the basket's rim or the backboard, or the opponent's gained possession. FIBA adopted a 30-second shot clock 2 years later, resetting the clock when a shot was attempted. Women's basketball adopted a 30-second shot clock in 1971. The NCAA adopted a 45-second shot clock for men while continuing with the 30-second shot clock for women in 1985. The men's shot clock was then reduced to 35 seconds in 1993. FIBA reduced the shot clock to 24 seconds in 2000 and changed the clock's resetting to when the ball touched the rim of the basket. Originally, a missed shot where the shot clock expired while the ball is in the air constituted a violation. In 2003, the rule was changed so that the ball remains live in this situation as long as it has touched the rim. If the ball touches the rim and slightly bounces over the basketball hoop, it will be called as a loose ball.
Hey, carry on. I just have a question. I just got these new boots. You think I could rock them on the court?
In 1917, right before the Great Depression, Converse first came to the market with a version of the Chuck Taylor All-Stars. After making a series of tweaks and style changes over the next few decades, this canvas shoe with a rubber sole would remain the most popular basketball sneaker of its time through much of the 1960s. Nike would release its first ever basketball shoe in 1972, when it came out with the Nike Bruin. As opposed to canvas, this shoe was constructed with leather and suede. It is thought that the name was inspired by the UCLA dynasty led by John Wooden around the same time. Nike dropped the Air Jordan 1s in 1985, and the sneaker game has never been the same since. Arguably the most iconic basketball shoe in sneaker history, there isn't a true shoe collection in the world that doesn't feature the first pair of kicks made by famous Michael Jordan. These Jordans will forever be in that special wing of the Basketball Sneaker Hall of Fame. The Reebok pumps were a shoe made famous during the 1991 NBA dunk contest. Young ballers all over the world were pumping up the tongues of their high tops just like D. Brown did on his way to the title. If they were lucky, those high tops they were pumping up were actually a pair of Reebok pumps. The shoe was designed to inflate for ankle support. Pumping up other kicks on your way in for a layup didn't really do anything. As a result of being a decade in, LeBron James' 10th shoe is the LeBron X. Arguably the most popular shoe at the moment, this version of the Blonde sneaker series might be its crowning achievement. It is only fitting that it dropped following LeBron's first NBA title in 2013.
Aaron, there's something I've always been thinking of. Who created this ball? And when? Yeah, I wonder.
Dr. James Naismith invented the game of basketball in 1891, but the game didn't get its own ball until 3 years later. Early basketball players used the soccer ball, which they threw into a half-bushel peach basket hung on opposite ends of the gym. Naismith called on A.G. Spalding and Bros to come up with a ball specifically for the game of basketball in 1894. The company created a leather ball held together with laces and weighing in at a fewer than 20 ounces. The first basketball had a circumference of 32 inches, which was 4 inches bigger than a soccer ball. Naismith wanted to create a ball that was flashy, therefore he went with the color orange. Basketball laces went by the wayside in 1948. With a new molded construction and a smaller circumference of 30 inches becoming official in 1949. Basketball design advanced again, with its traditional 4-paneled changed to 8, and the NBA adopted this as its official ball design in 1970. The NBA also adopted Spalding's full-grain leather ball as its official ball in 1983, although other leagues and players use a variety of different brands, some made of synthetic rubber or rubberized materials rather than leather. Specialized basketballs for smaller players, high school players, and specific for indoor or outdoor use have also come into play in the past.
The official governing body for basketball in Canada is the Canadian Amateur Basketball Association, now called Basketball Canada, formed in December 1928 in Port Arthur. Its initial main function was to assist with national championships, but its programs beyond men's and women's national championships now include men's and women's national team development, technical development with coaching, official and player certification, youth programs, a Hall of Fame, educational services, and promotion and revenue generation. In 1973, Basketball Canada voted to adopt the international playing rules of the International Amateur Basketball Federation, known as FIBA. With the formation of a National Association of Basketball Officials, known as NABO, the transition to international rules has been relatively smooth, although Canadian universities and some high schools have maintained the former rules. A new era in Canadian basketball began in 1994 when the National Basketball Association, the major professional league in the US, awarded franchises to two Canadian cities, the Toronto Raptors and Vancouver Grizzlies, who both began to play in 1995, brought major professional basketball to Canada for the first time. The Grizzlies were unsuccessful and moved to Memphis, Tennessee in 2001, and the Raptors continue as the league's only Canadian team. Many Canadian players have also had successful careers in the US. In 1999, Vince Carter of the Toronto Raptors won the NBA Rookie of the Year award. In 2005, while playing for the Phoenix Suns, Steve Nash won the league's MVP award. He's the first Canadian to receive the honor. Canada's achievements in men's competition in subsequent Olympiads were as follows. In Montreal 1976, the USSR defeated Canada 100-72 to win the bronze medal, giving Canada a reputable fourth-place finish. At the 2000 Sydney Olympics, the lightly regarded men's team upset world champion Yugoslavia and finished 7th overall. However, the Canadian women's team did qualify and finished 11th overall. The CIS. Each year, over 10,000 student athletes across Canada participate in 11 sport disciplines with a schedule for close to 3,000 events starting in September and concluding in March. This begins a course of action that will lead to the ultimate goal in university sport, claiming the national championship title. From Victoria to St. John's, student athletes competing for national honors represent an exciting, vibrant dimension of Canadian society.